That made me think of Nazarene. Do you know It's like that.
That's a big one, yeah.
Where you can't dance. And so I went to a concert, and it's at a Nazarene college close to San Diego. Christian show. MXPX was playing, a bunch of other bands, and you can't dance. You couldn't dance. It's like you'd start like moshing or whatever,
Wild.
and there'd be all these guards like, stop. You can't, like, because that just, these Nazarenes, they're like, and no dancing, and it's like, all right.
Hello and welcome to Growing Up Christian. I'm Casey.
And I'm Sam.
And we were sitting here getting ready. We had to reschedule with the guests and stuff. We're chatting about just podcast stuff. And, there's a pretty big community of podcasters, a lot of which that we've met have been really cool. People like Existential Ginger or Steven from Ravel, or just a bunch of Micah, in his podcast, just a bunch of really cool people. And, as a part of this whole podcasting, it's kind of a constant guest exchange, right? You come to our podcast, if you want us to do your podcast in the future, you can do that. We did have one such experience that just didn't work out. And we kind of sat on the story for a while, because we were thinking at some point this episode might get published.
Right, because that's what happens when you record episodes with people and take up 2 hours of your time, that it will most definitely be released.
Yeah, especially when you're requested to be on the show. So we did a show, I think it was the beginning of May. So what's that, 4 months ago?
God, was it that long ago now?
It was 4 months ago.
And the show had a sporadic release schedule, so they might do like every 2 weeks. I mean, sometimes maybe on like every third week. It wasn't like a weekly podcast. So like with it not coming out, you keep checking and you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe they had like 3 or so ahead. So maybe now we're looking at a few, like maybe like 12 weeks out or something, like maybe 9 weeks out or something.
And so this show, it was like 3 or 4 friends who, I mean, it was, there was a lady that ran the show, it seemed like, and her significant other. And then there was another guy. It was 3, right? It was 3 people?
Yeah.
Are we going to just say the name?
Sure.
Okay. The show is called Speculate With Us. And we linked up with them on Discord. So I had posted about our show in a Discord group that's specifically for podcasters, and people share their shows and things. And I got a message from this woman that said, "Hey, you should come on our show and be a guest." It seemed very like somewhat formal, like they had a pretty good system in place for getting guests involved and stuff. They had a list of topics that they wanted to talk about, and you could kind of like jump on it. We were specifically requested to talk about the Second Amendment.
Yep.
And this was right around the time that we had Shane Claiborne on.
Yeah.
If you remember that episode. So we were kind of primed and ready for it. I mean, I'm always primed and ready to talk about guns. Sam was like, we're going to talk about guns again?
Yeah. In a room where it became pretty clear early on that I was the odd one out, for sure.
And this is not, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. This was a very opinionated room that was not really based in facts. It was a lot of like
speculation.
That was most of what was happening. And it was a lot of the traditional examples about like, you get to talking about gun laws, right? Should we have a law about whether or not a person who's been arrested for domestic violence can go buy a firearm, or within a certain period of time or whatever. And the way that those arguments always devolve is you start talking about specifics of legislation, like maybe this would be a good idea. Maybe this would keep people safe, especially these, this vulnerable group of people that seems to be targeted by this type of a person. And it always ends up being like, well, if you take away all the guns, you're going to end up like Pol Pot's regime in Cambodia, and everybody's going to die. And that's why you can't take away all the guns. They're like, nobody's talking about taking away all the guns. Okay. We're going to get that off the table now so that we can just talk about specifics here. Would this be a good idea? And it continually just reverted back to these arguments with one guy in particular that had a lot of opinions. And his
feathers got a little ruffled at the start because obviously I'm not the gun enthusiast that Cade is. And I've probably stated this opinion before, but like, I don't care that Casey has them because I'm not worried about Casey. I do have concerns that access to them will allow for people who shouldn't have access to them to get it. And I did probably ruffle some feathers when I said, I personally don't give a shit if you don't get to have guns. That's not really a problem for me if you don't own guns. So I don't think I started out on a high note, but I was like, I'm already like the dissenting voice in this group. Everyone's clearly cool with guns, more at an uncomfortable level for me. So I threw in those grenades that are just what the reaction's just going to cause them to short circuit a little bit because it's funny. And I don't know what did I have to lose on this podcast?
I think that was like a proof of concept moment for our dynamic.
Yeah,
because you and I disagree on a lot of things in that issue, and I thought you were magnificent. You went off a couple of times and just got real belligerent. Not exaggerate. You're not saying anything that's not correct or anything that you don't believe, but you poked the bear.
Yeah,
a little bit. And it was fantastic. I loved it. And every time, so these arguments, they just went around and around and around. And the whole time, this guy who, we had listened to a couple episodes, this guy runs over guests. That's what he does, right? He gets somebody on. He has a stated opinion. As soon as they start dissenting or taking things in another direction, this guy would just pile drive them and just overwhelm them. He's like 100% confident in everything he says, just leaves no room for the guest to make an argument. And when they do, he leads it off into the bushes, and we were just like so ready for those objections from coming off of the one for Clay, which the episode with Shane was really simple. I thought it was a really reasonable discussion.
Oh yeah.
But every time he tried to throw one of those things in, this red herring to pull us off the trail.
Yeah, the big one was when people, the common vernacular, people use the word assault rifle. And so he, instead of just taking it at face value that people are using shorthand and common vernacular to get a point across, it was like he went down that whole well, actually, it's not really what's the difference between an assault rifle and a hunting rifle? I don't know. And then he shows you, he holds up some guns and bullets and shit like that and tries to tell you that it's really all the same and that there's no difference. And it's like,
yeah,
okay. Yeah, there's no difference because they all have a little bit of gunpowder and a little bullet in a brass casing that goes in the shooty thing, and then they all shoot stuff. They're all guns. But there is a difference in the amount of people you can kill in a short period of time, and that's the conversation at hand. So to derail it and have a conversation about bullet size and whether or not they explode inside of you or go right through you, who gives a fuck about that?
It's
wild.
Well, and everybody who's been around gun enthusiasts, I'm a big gun enthusiast. I mean, I'm not super big on all the tactical stuff, but I like old shotguns and old antique rifles and things, and but I really get sick of gun culture because it's full of this type of thing. Like you're trying to have a discussion about something, and here comes the guy, and he's like, "Assault rifle is a meaningless term that's meant to just lead people off the trail, and it's actually no different." And he goes, "Hang on, I'm gonna go get something real quick." So he comes back, and if you've been around guns much, he's got a 22 long rifle shell in one hand and a 223 shell in the other hand, and he starts doing this. These are both 22 caliber bullets. This is right, and we're like, dude, I know what that is. That has nothing to do with this discussion.
That's why I was glad you knew, because I'm like, I don't have any follow-ups here. I mean, this means nothing to me. He wasn't speaking my language at all, but it felt like a disingenuous argument to prove I'm not even sure what. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, so it was just like one situation after another. You try to go down those same rabbit holes, and we just kind of stomped on his pecker. And the other two people were pretty cool. Like they were nice. It was really mostly just this one guy who was belligerent. And I mean, we spent like 2 hours talking about this stuff, and finished it out, and we kind of debriefed afterwards. Like, well, I mean, Nick got a little heated, but I feel like it was okay. I think that's what they were looking for and stuff. And then we waited. And a week went by, nothing. Couple weeks, a month, 2 months. Here we are 4 months later. The episode's not coming out.
Coming out. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not coming out. We should send him a message though and be like, when's that episode getting posted? I was really excited to share it with people.
Hey, we were just talking about you guys.
Yeah. I know. I'm guessing they don't really listen to this. That it was just kind of a one-off. Like they found you on that cool Discord and was like, "Oh, that sounds like an interesting dynamic to bring into a conversation." I don't know if there was like an assumption with the term Christian in our podcast name that they would that we would have had particular feelings about it. But I don't know. I wasn't sure why they wanted us to have that conversation. I would think they'd want to have a conversation about something along the lines of like, is religion harmful, or does God exist? I don't know, something more along the lines of what we're doing here. So when it was 2A, I was just like, I'm a little out of my element. I mean, I have some beliefs about it. I understand more than I could repeat back and sound intelligent. Like when I hear people like Shane talk about their piece, or, I mean, I've heard enough where I'm like, I've formulated an opinion, but if you ask me to regurgitate all the information I've based that opinion on, I might not look that smart. But I didn't look that dumb on that episode. But you will never know. No one will ever hear it, I guess. So it doesn't really matter. I could have actually been the biggest asshole in the room, and we could just make all of this up. So that maybe
just
this
the right amount.
Push them to maybe this will push them to release it. We'll share this episode with them. Maybe people should go at. No, please don't.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that.
But if you want an example of what we were talking about, they have an episode on atheism that wasn't that far back in the rotation. And if you listen to a couple minutes of that, you'll know the guy we're talking about.
Oh my God.
So,
now that we've shit on another podcast, I feel like a bit of a dick, but
well,
I didn't shit on the podcast as a whole, just the conversation.
Just the guy. Just the guy.
Just the episode, and the way that I think we're mostly just like, how the fuck are you not going to put that out? That was fine. Like, why wouldn't you release it? I think that's what's more. That's why we're even talking about it. Like, if they released it, we would have directed people to it and never thought about it or spoke of it again, right?
Yeah. Release the documents.
Yeah, I got the evidence right here. In other news, this really cool thing happened this week, Casey. I think you might have just kind of caught up on it today. Maybe it just happened today. It was either today or yesterday or some shit. There's this really cool guy who's circulating the internet named Logan Van Dorn. Not sure if anyone's familiar with him, but you are. You're definitely familiar with him. He harassed like a group of just turned 18-year-old girls on a beach for wearing bikinis. So he's a fun one.
What are you supposed to do when you're filled with the spirit, with righteous anger?
Yeah. And that's what it was, like a belligerent, like, so he was his side of the story is because we only know it because he released a TikTok about it as he's at this lake with his family, his fiance, I guess what might be his kid. But it was basically like, he was like, kept saying over and over, there's like a 7-year-old, a 9-year-old, seeing them in those bikinis was just really inappropriate. That's not something that was okay for a 9-year-old to see.
And it's funny because the piece that I saw was the intro to it was, I was coming back from wherever and my family was picking up their stuff saying, we have to move because there's these girls here and they're dressed inappropriately.
Yeah, he's like, I was coming back from jerking off in the outhouse in the parking lot.
Just looking at people's feet under the changing blanket. He's just doing a Dobson, So yeah, this guy took it upon himself to, show these girls the error of their way. These young women, he wanted them to know that their bodies would never satisfy them. And that, obviously the only reason they were wearing bikinis was because they're trying to prove that they're pretty enough and they're never going to feel.
He called it like pornographic, whether it's pornography on the beach and shit.
Yeah. Ugh. God. Going up to a group of like teenage girls and telling them that they remind you of porn.
Not even knowing how old they are, dude. They could have easily been under 18. Like, fuck off, you weird pervert.
Yeah. The whole thing was insane. I mean, you're watching the video, and what's crazy about it, and I think why it makes you so angry is because, like, we recognize the language.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't know that even in my most stuffy and obnoxious Christian phase, I don't think I would ever have gone up to just random strangers to tell them I didn't like what they were wearing or that it was inappropriate or whatever,
Yeah.
It's just kidding. It's insane. It doesn't.
But let's not pretend like those conversations about what was appropriate for women to wear didn't happen on a dorm room full of men. That's
yeah.
How, like, so when you say the language was familiar, it's familiar if you grew up in youth group. It's like, any youth group beach day is like, you can't wear a bikini to the beach. Casey, I cannot laugh at this. Casey always insists on.
I'm sorry.
A fucking steel water bottle full of ice every time we podcast.
I'm gonna cut it out, and then you're just gonna look like a douche.
No, you won't, because you can hear it on so many of our episodes if you're paying attention. And anyway, that's what you just heard, Casey. You shouldn't edit it out. And
I will do better. I will strive to be better.
But anyway, the language was like, it's just familiar. Beach day for youth groups, it's like always like, if you wear a bikini, you have to wear a t-shirt over it, or you have to wear a one piece or a modest tankini, is like they would always say. And there was all that stumbling block language. And there is something I think what's interesting about a guy like him going out of his way to tell these people that is he more committed? Like, is that like a weird, almost like, it's a diluted level of commitment. Like, that's the thing. Like, there's that dissonance where like we would have used similar language and might have thought that, but we still had the faculties to say, the mental faculties to say, oh, this clearly like it's not something you would say to people, or you would write it off as like they're lost. And those words that's not the way to go about changing hearts. What he did is like the equivalent of handing out tracts in a street preacher, where you could say like, well, they're out there saying what they think is the truth. And ironically, if you go through with Instagram, he has a lot of bullshit posts about like saying the truth in love. He just said,
oh, that's a favorite phrase, asshole. Isn't it?
Yeah. But when you think that is the truth, and you think that like, when they're already being dangled over a fucking fiery pit, well, there's not a lot to lose by like he left that situation and they're still just hanging over the fiery pit. Like, I mean, nothing changed when he's looking at things from that perspective. So,
yeah. And I think what it is what it comes down to is not that this guy is more committed or more concerned or any of the things that he would say or consider himself. Like, he's an exhibitionist. Like, this is a performance. It's something that, and if you look at his social media and stuff, like,
so
he's
performative
performing for people out there. Like, this guy obviously wants to be like the Christian TikToker and stuff like that.
Stephen Furtick for TikTok. Like, it's like him all yoked at the gym with like a bathroom selfie being like, just out here praising Jesus. Love me some Jesus. He saved me from my sins. And you're like, it's like, to God be the glory. Nothing for me. I'm just a vessel. And it's like, dude, fuck off. You're so full of shit and you can't even see it.
Yeah. Yeah. I watched one of him like doing a bunch of like basketball dribble moves and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden he picks it up and he's like, did you know that there's a God out there that loves you? And you're just like, what is this? This is bizarre, you know?
Yeah.
It's so strange. But I think so. Okay. So I think that like him approaching strangers about that, it's an exhibition. It's a performance. They get to be a part of his performance, which is for his family or his fiance or his TikTok audience or whatever it was, right?
Or his God. He's doing it all for God.
I don't know. He didn't even believe in God.
He doesn't perform for man. At the end of the day, he knows he did right by God, and that was enough for him.
You know, you can do anything you want, and if you say all glory to God afterwards, I mean, you did. I mean, it's all glory goes to him, and none of it was just like masturbatory at all.
Nope. Yeah, I mean, just ask every sexual predator evangelical pastor. I mean, all the ones who've been busted, they're just like, this is for God. This is God's gift to you. I'm God's gift to you. This is for like your God's gift to me. Like, there's always that like creepy fucking language around it where it's not totally dissimilar from what you just said.
Well, and like, okay, so we may not know people who approach strangers that way, but we know a lot of people who approached women that they knew and young women that they knew about those topics. To talk to them about their dress or the way they were behaving, or, hey, when you bent over, I saw your back, or, you know, I just want you to know that God values you more than this, or whatever the line was. And that, I think, is less of a performance and more about control.
Yeah.
Like, it's establishing dominance over a group of people like in your vicinity. I feel like that's part of what happened a lot in church environments and stuff, is that it was a leader or somebody like making it very clear that you're down here and they're up here, you know, and doing that through humiliation.
And at Liberty, it was when we were at Liberty, they had they would have, like, if a male RA saw a woman wearing something that was outside of the Liberty Way, their responsibility was to take it to a female RA. And if there wasn't anyone in the area, or they didn't know who the person was, because they weren't supposed to approach women about what they were wearing.
And you know, that was one of those that they did in the presentation. They're like, all right, guys, you're technically, you're not supposed to, but wink, do whatever you want to do.
Yeah. And that's where you see the control, right? Like, when you establish the role of RA as like also a spiritual leadership type position at a school like that, which is that's what the role is there. You're not just like making sure kids aren't dead on the dorm. It's there's a spiritual hierarchy there. You have your RAs, and then your spiritual life directors, and then your prayer leaders, and then everybody else. So you're in charge of essentially the spirit. They basically make you a mini dorm pastor. And when that's your job and you're supposed to call out the bullshit on campus, and you see a woman doing something or dressing in a way that's not quote unquote appropriate, and you're not allowed to say anything to them, but you don't know who they are. So you can't go talk to a woman. It's like, it's crunch time. And if they let this person go, no one's going to be able to tell them and hold them accountable. And then that's when that's when I don't know what's going on, because it's that devotion to the rules, to a system. It might be control, even though I wouldn't suggest that that all of the RAs there were that type of controlling.
No, but there's definitely like a weird reverence for like rules and guidelines and formalities.
Yeah, like I can't let someone get away with this. That's my job to enforce rules. So they'll go against the rules and then call out these women for it, and then it would probably nothing would happen because Liberty doesn't do shit about stuff like that. But I don't know, man. It was such a strange, like when you would hear those stories of women being like, yeah, this guy RA was like, oh, your skirt's too short. And it's just like, holy shit, you're a fucking pervert. It's like the total vibe that you get from that. I don't know if they're just like, and again, that is obviously the patriarchal institution of things where, they're so convinced. They've bought into the narrative that, and you'll hear this Logan kid use the same language that like your bodies are worth so much more than that. It's like they're doing them a favor. Like they don't want them to be shamed by what they're wearing. Everyone's thinking terrible thoughts about you and you're lesser than. And so now we have to come up with a way to shame. So it just turns into like shame in the moment. Then you actually legitimately shame them for it. And I guess I don't know. They can't see through it. There's like that patriarchal, like, I have to do this. It's my manly duty. I value women. Like that's their idea of valuing women. And I feel like I can confidently say that they do truly believe that, because I truly believe. And that's what's super dangerous about that belief system is like when people do truly believe that, like this Logan kid, that they can go on TikTok the next day and say, look, I am standing firm on the word of God. I'm speaking the truth. If they don't want to hear it, that's on them. But I'm being true to my God, and it's worth his job because he got fired from his Christian construction company for it. Like, and that's what it creates, that fucking martyrdom complex, because you can only be a martyr for something you sincerely believe. So that's it. They just like go balls to the wall on it. And
the other thing that was funny too is that we've talked about so much is just this like constant pushing this narrative that like you're dressing this way because you're not fulfilled. You're looking for fulfillment and you're not finding it. And you can only find that in a relationship with Jesus, and Jesus wants better for you, and Jesus can fill that hole in your heart. Like just the most broad assumptions about people. And it's just a continuation of that whole like, the only way to find meaning and happiness is through this right here. And I can tell because you're not doing what I view as central to living your life for Christ. I can tell that you're not fulfilled and that you're unhappy. And dude, I think you got to give those women a pat on the back for just like feeding it back to this dude. They hit him back hard, and it was.
They're like, why don't you gouge your fucking eyes out then?
It was a crazy story, and one that I'm sure we're going to hear more about. God, I hope so. This guy doesn't become like some mouthpiece for super like, I'll speak the truth. I don't care what you think, conservative Christians. Which he might end up being like one of the spokesperson people for that.
Might be a regular John Cooper about it.
Sharing the truth in love, brother.
Is it possible that he'll become like, the next TikTok sensation like that? Do you think that's possible?
Or Christian TikTok is a real weird place.
Yeah,
because you get a following on Christian TikTok from being ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, he did already, from what I can tell, in the Discord, someone shared a link to some like fucking slam poetry or some shit. I couldn't see it. It was like spoken word nonsense, but every time I clicked on it, it said that the video had been changed to private. Like I couldn't view it. So
I know I couldn't get those.
He's been getting lit up. Also, if you check his Instagram, like every picture now has comments being like, "You fucking piece of shit." It's like,
shout out to our pal Deconstructing Purity Culture for for just having the leads on this story for us. She kept the Discord hopping today, just all the updates, and she found a lot of great info about what was going on and stuff. So if you're not following Deconstructing Purity Culture on Instagram, you should definitely go give her a follow. She shares a lot of really insightful things. And there's so much that you can rip on about this guy, because we didn't even talk about the fact that he posts like his Instagram, he posts weird Christian artwork and
then talks about the word that Jesus gave him for it.
How Jesus spoke to him directly about what he was seeing in these like crappy, waiting room art page pieces.
He mimics the gospel parable like narratives, like where it's like, they tell that story, like Jesus tells the story and then he explains what it means. It's like he tells the story. It's like he sees the art. It's like, there's this, and this is what's happening. And then Jesus explained to me what it meant. And Jesus said, and then he goes off on like whatever he thinks it is that Jesus told him. I don't know. It'd be great to hear all this from him directly and what he's thinking. I want
to hear. I want to hear from this dude. I just want to get inside his brain a little bit and just see what's not there.
Yeah, right. See what there could be. Now, of course, we go off here on this. This episode will be coming out. I don't know. I can't remember the
September
dates. Yeah, but I message him, and if he gets back to us, if he's like, well, I don't know if this is a good fit. Not that a good fit matters to him. He knows what we're about. I wasn't disingenuous or dishonest.
He's not here to tailor his message to you.
Yeah, but if he does decide to be like, maybe I'll check out the podcast and see what I'm getting into, and the first thing he's going to hear is us just taking a giant shit on him. I don't know if he's going to be like, yeah, this is a great place for me to go and tell my piece.
We're definitely, we're in the taking dumps mood tonight, I guess.
I know. What are we doing, man? Are we one of those podcasts now? I don't know if we want to do that.
A time of reflection here.
Yeah. I'm going to go repent after this. Maybe I'll go look at a piece of art until Jesus tells me exactly what it is that I did wrong tonight and what he wants to do with my life. This could be my testimony.
I'm ready for you to share it. Yeah, let me know any revelations you have.
All right, I'll see what comes up tonight.
So let's introduce our guest for this episode. We talked to a guy who is a jack of all trades in the entertainment industry. Really impressive resume. And the more we learned about it, the more we were like, man, this guy's done a little of everything.
We were actually less aware of what the extent of his resume when we first got this thing scheduled. He was what sparked the conversation was he was part of an old a band called the Dingees, a late 90s Tooth and Nail band. So we thought, oh, dope. Like we came up on Tooth and Nail, Solid State. Like that's, if it wasn't for that record label, I don't know where we would have been. Like that had such an impact on our lives that we're like, oh, that'd be cool to get an idea from someone who came up in the late 90s on that label. And then that probably turned out to be a lot smaller part of the conversation than we expected. And there are so many other interesting things about him. And that was really fun.
Yeah. We did Christian camp stories. We talked about, his experiences in Hollywood. He's an actor and filmmaker, director. He teaches acting classes at the college level. Just a cool guy with just a wild life story of, all these different experiences and things like that. Obviously, just a really creative person. And yeah, we just had a great time talking to him. Like I said, we didn't really understand like everything that the guy had done when we first started the episode. And as we went forward, we're like, man, this is impressive. So
yeah.
I think you're going to like hearing from Scott. He's just a cool guy. So if you're not in our Discord, again, jump in there, get in on the conversation. You can rip on this bikini shame and turd if you want to. It's not too late for that. You can find the link in any of our social media. As always, if you're enjoying the show, we would really appreciate it if you'd share it with a friend, leave us a review on iTunes, and keep an eye on our social media feed. We've been brainstorming and going over artwork and stuff like that. We got some cool things coming down the pipe. So
yeah, super excited about it.
So enjoy our conversation with Scott Rodgers. And we're back with our guest, musician, director, actor, filmmaker, just an all-around entertainer, Scott Rodgers. How you doing, Scott?
Mr. Entertainment, they call me. I'm doing well. Just kidding. I'm doing well. How are you? How are you guys doing?
Good. It sounds like you're one of those Hollywood elites that everyone's terrified of.
Coastal elite, 100%. I'm a coastal elite. Well, I was born and raised in Orange County, and now I live in Los Angeles, so I'm absolutely a coastal elite.
Yeah.
The coast is good. The weather is good. And
I could go for some of that.
And my politics are beyond anything left of anything. I'm a sort
it's
of
tough to be alt-right out in there, huh? You having a hard time?
No. Well, no. We got all kinds of people out here. It's amazing how it's like it leans a little one way or it leans a little the other way, but out here it's definitely we got all kinds for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like when I was I traveled a lot for work for a while, and there was certain places where you would go and you'd be talking to people, and it was like nobody that you talked to was from there. They were all transplants and stuff. Is that rare in LA, or is it just dependent on where you're at? There's a lot of people who are native.
Is it rare that people are native?
Yeah, you tend to run into a lot of people who moved in.
Yes. Yes, that's definitely true. It really does depend on what circles you run in, it really does depend on what your life is. And so, yeah, if you're trying to be an actor or something like that, you go into an acting class, no one's from California.
Yeah.
But if you walk down the street, tons of people are obviously LA natives. It's a, insanely huge city. And, a good portion of people are undocumented too. They've showed up from Mexico or wherever. And that's the thing with LA is I love LA so much, and it's just the greatest. And there's just things you can't do or get anywhere else. But it's easy to be like, oh, okay, Kardashians and Rodeo Drive and actors and, all that kind of element. But beyond that is all just the real people working every day, and LA's.
Yeah, I imagine it feels pretty normal for most people who live around the LA area where especially if you're not in that industry. I don't know how broad the industry life of it all is, but obviously it's pretty big. But it feels like with New York, right? Like I feel like when I'm only like 3 hours from New York, so it's like the excitement would be anything related to NBC or like 30 Rock kind of stuff, like Conan O'Brien walking down the street or like that. You always expect to like see certain like a select, like that's one of the things that you want to see if you're vacationing to New York is like a 6'4"
and they're there
redheaded
and they're all there.
The
but it's also New York City and it's like a million things going on.
Right.
Yeah. But growing up in Orange County, it's a totally different world. It's like might as well have been not anywhere near Los Angeles. It's just as conservative as anywhere else. Like they call it the Orange Curtain, because it's really historically very much more conservative Republican in Orange County. And wouldn't you know it, religious and, evangelical, like that's how I got all up in the mix, just tons of, that's where Harvest Crusade and all these things flourish, right? Greg Laurie and Saddleback Church. What's that guy's name? He did Obama's.
Saddleback.
He did Obama's prayer.
Is that Warren? Is that Rick Warren?
Exactly. That's who I'm.
Okay, yeah. Did you guys ever read The Purpose-Driven Life? If we're let's derail this a little bit. Was that?
Is that a book?
But I know what you're talking about.
Okay. It was just Rick Warren's like big book. That was like what put him on the map. That's what exploded Saddleback and gave him his name to fame or whatever.
Sounds awful.
Yeah, the purpose-driven life is what it was. And then, of course, wouldn't you know, his runner-ups were all a bunch of purpose-driven books. So it was like the purpose-driven church, the purpose-driven marriage, the whatever.
It was like shallow fulfillment for dummies.
Yeah.
So the way that we ended up getting connected and talking and stuff is you were in a band called the Dingees.
That's right.
Which was an early tooth and nail band. And if you were a youth group kid at any point in the last like 30 years, you probably listened to a bunch of tooth and nail bands. We were just kind of talking about all of the different ones. But so growing up in Orange County, kind of walk us through that. Give us your background on growing up.
Yeah, I grew up in Anaheim. Then I moved to a city called Cypress, which is right next to it, and never went to church, really. My grandma went consistently, but my parents never took me or anything. But I had a friend, Matt Grover, took me to a summer camp when I was like 11 or 12. And it was the whole, Christian kid summer camp where it was like altar call at the end of the week and kids are crying and they're like, this one kid, I remember him, he was in my cabin, like, I'm going to read the whole Bible this year, and just like, so like if he didn't, just like all this, hysteria.
I wonder if I was at summer camp with you. No.
Maybe. I mean, it's Jesus camp.
I made a lot of those. Right? I'll read the entire Bible in a year pledges.
Me too. It gets real tough to stick to it when you get to like the genealogies, which is like 3 chapters in. You're like, so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so. So boring.
But it's really cool when you add up all of them and their ages and you find out the earth is 10,000 years old. There's a plus side. If you like math and genealogies, you can come up with some really cool theories.
So like I feel like Christian summer camp is just like this whole other world that you either did it or you didn't. Because that was like some of the most bizarre experiences that I had growing up in the church.
100%. Yeah, looking back, I can picture the faces of the like kids that weren't as invested and like kind of in the youth group that went to the camp where they're like, all right, I guess I'm going to this camp. And you could just see their faces. They're like, I guess I'm into this, but like everyone else has really drank the Kool-Aid, And I always did have that theory, at least in California, all the camps, are up higher altitude. I think it's like less oxygen. I swear by the end, it's like, it's Midsommar, it's like hysterical. It's hysteria. It really is hysteria.
Yeah.
It's like fear and like, but you'll live forever. Don't worry if you just do that. By the end of a week with like silly games and songs and then like, oh gosh, it's like bringing stuff up, right? It's like this is what you guys are doing all the time, right? We're all
Plus,
kind of
it's like they keep you up and active so much. Like you're exhausted by the time Thursday rolls around. You're so exhausted, and then they make you sit through it yet another altar call, and it's like the end of the week. So this is like the ceremony at the end of the first Star Wars movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's like win or go home. It's like, this is your last chance, man. This is your last chance,
Time to rededicate your life to Christ.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, I did that a couple of times. But what was so if you didn't really go to church and then you went to the summer camp with someone, were you finding it strange? Like, or were you familiar enough with that culture where it wasn't like a total mind warp?
I think I was just young enough to where I didn't know what was strange. I think that's what happens to all of us. Whatever, it's just, you go and you're raised in a different country. Different foods are not strange to you, right? And so to me, I was still young enough to where, and it seemed casual at first enough. And then, so it kind of just worked where they were like, by the way, this is going down, this Jesus thing, you got to like get right with them and ask them into your heart or you're going to hell. And so with someone who had no other reference for that kind of concept or having anyone be like, hey, guess what? You're okay one way or the other. I wasn't equipped with any of that. And so I felt like it wasn't weird. I just bought in very much. I was way in because then we came down the mountain and I was in the youth group, and so all through junior high and I started I played in Christian bands in 7th and 8th grade. The first band I was in was with 2 youth leaders, and the band was named Enoch's Journey.
Nice.
Yeah, I like that.
And so you guys, you get that, right? So it's like people who have that experience of like, okay, I'm versed in some of this, this Bible stories where he walked into heaven or whatever. And it was just like looking back. So it's so funny and so cringe, as they would say these days. But, and there's a funny little anecdote because when I then joined the Dingees, when I was like 19, my old band Enoch's Journey played a show with the Dingees. Like they were a band before I was in the band, and they had put out their first 2 albums on Tooth and Nail, but I had played a show with that Enoch's Journey band, and then all those Dingy guys had an inside joke of like what a cheesy Christian band is, and they like would sing these kind of funny, like fake, like trust in God, He will save your soul, but they were making fun of that band that I was in. And so years later, I joined the Dingees, and they like were like, "Oh yeah, Enoch's Journey," and I was like, "Wait, what did you say?" I was in that band, and they're like, "What?" It came full circle.
Big fans.
Yeah, but dude, also youth
was
group
like
was
a
dope.
Great.
Sorry, go ahead.
That was like a great like Bible trivia gotcha question. It was always like, who is the only man to never die? And right. Yeah, so you had to throw up. Everybody learned that Enoch.
Yeah, it's like, and you think just it's Jesus, Bible trivia. Not Jesus. Yeah, exactly. But when I remember my youth group in junior high was pretty great because there were so many hot girls there. It was just like, I was like, man, this is cool. We go to the beach every Wednesday. These girls are so cute, man. And I'm like a little 13-year-old guy, like, okay, I'm in, And I was in, but my kind of journey with, being a Christian mixed with all that, I definitely like went in and out of all of it through high school. Like there's the Christian kids in the high school, and there's a big movement. I think there was like a club, like a Christian club. And then I was, but I'd just be in and out of it, cause like I played sports or like smoke weed. I smoked weed one time in high school, or, drink, I'd be like in or out, and like, I'd vacillate. Cause then when I was a senior, I dated a Mormon girl, and really, and we really liked each other and such, but like, and I was still looking at it through the lens of, well, she's Mormon and I'm Christian. I was trying to like investigate their Jesus, like their extra Jesus stories that they have. And, but really I got out of high school, and pretty quickly it was just kind of like, oh yeah, never mind. I don't know. I just feel like the world kind of, this sounds corny and it sounds very 40-year-old white guy, but I read the book On the Road by Jack Kerouac, and just the descriptions of like, yeah, go out there, see the world, do stuff, like get drunk and like hang out. And it just like struck something in me. And it, in a way, I just felt like for myself personally, like the world opened up more, where I was like, oh, okay, look at all this stuff out here. There's no way all these stories that they were trying to tell me, or like how I have to live. That's when it started. That's when it cracked for me. And I just was like, I'm out, And even all the years of being in the Dingees, because I joined the Dingees and we were already a little bit, we were never really like Christian-y, like too Christian-y for that label, but they were a little like over that scene too. But it was nice. I met them. I joined that band, and yeah, we just put out the third record called Crucial Conspiracy, and I got to tour around as a 19-year-old kid. That was super fun. And then but yeah, straight up 9/11 happened when we came home from tour, and it was just like, oh, it just didn't, no one wanted to keep pursuing it in that way, and so our lives went in different directions. But we still play music, we still put out albums, and it's great. Still best friends.
So you joined when you were 19. So when you were like out of high school, that's when you kind of shifted out. But it wasn't like, obviously it wasn't a hard shift where you were like disassociated yourself from it in such a way where that was off-putting. Like it was with Tooth and Nail, which was obviously a Christian label.
Right. Yeah, it was one of those. Yeah. It was also an opportunity to play drums in a band that could make a record, and I think that's really what a lot of those Christian bands, that's what's alluring, is it's like you want to try to make it in the, secular music scene, regular music. No, it's harder, right? You want to go on tour, but if you get on Tooth and Nail, there's like a built-in Christian kid, scene and network where you can truly, like, you can book a tour for a Christian band and you just give them every third show as a church, and the church pays you a guaranteed amount of money because they have that money, because it's for their youth ministry. And they're like, let's give this money to these bands. So we would, play a church and then play some club or whatever, in the next town. But it was a mixture of all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And was there, like, when you were doing church shows and stuff, or youth group shows, being that you were sort of drifting away from Christianity, or you had already drifted away from it to some extent, like, did that ever become a point of conflict at those shows? Like, because I remember they were like, when I was in a band in college, you had to be on your best behavior if you were playing at a youth group.
It definitely did. Well, there's all the crazy kids that go to the shows, and they're like, they go up to MXPX and they're like, why don't you talk about Jesus more in your shows? And it's like,
yes,
I watched that happen, a few times. And then, you can just tell sometimes the kids come up to you, quite frankly, our shows weren't as big. And so there weren't as many people to be the kind of crazy kids, but almost every show, or every other show, that you get the kid who's like, wants to talk about why you're not, because we didn't preach from the stage and the lyrics aren't like Christian. And so there would be kids who are like so serious, like, hey, really wanting to know why we're not, witnessing on stage more. And but again, at the time, I
we're
think
in a church, dude.
Yeah.
It's a church.
Yeah. Especially church shows. But one way or the other, I think we definitely weren't looking for fights, and we weren't, trying to like be like, screw you guys. We were kind of just doing what was in front of us. It was like, we want to make an album. These people are going to help us make an album. We want to play shows. We'll play for anybody. And also most of the people were cool, and all the other bands were super chill. We went on tour with a band called Goaty Hook and a band called Sidewalk Slam that turned into Run Kid Run. And they toured a bunch before me, but, it was great. It was like playing music it still was like just an amazing experience, traveling around in a van and playing shows. And the only difference is Peg's girlfriend at the time, still together. They have 3 kids, but Peg is this lead singer and songwriter of the Dingees, and we had started getting into weed a little bit. It's okay to talk about doing drugs on this podcast.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's encouraged.
Okay, yeah. Good. I figured whatever I listen to, I'm like, of your pod, I'm like, okay, I think I'm okay here. But
yeah, there's
I still hesitate. I'm like, ooh, am I being a bad guy? But basically,
you are ruining your testimony.
I am ruining my testimony. But I'll turn it around at the end. But Kelly used to send us like a care package, 3 or 4 cities ahead, and it would have a bunch of little, mailed and package, and then it'd be a little Altoids box, and then inside the Altoid box would be some weed, right? And so we'd like roll a little pinner joint, and after our shows at the Red Roof Inn or we'd go to the stairwell and like smoke a little weed. And like that was one. It was also when we first really started smoking weed, and so you just get crazy high off of one little hit, and you're like talking all night long. But all to say, like, I mean, it was amazing experiences every night and playing with them and stuff. But the pastors would be like, here's your package. And I don't know, I think it's kind of funny that they're handing us
them into drug dealers.
Exactly.
Drug mules.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's funny how Casey and I have talked about this a good bit here and there, at least, is the first, like, cause we didn't smoke weed till we were older. I forget when you did, Casey, but I was like almost 30. So latecomer, and you do it and you're like, oh, okay, that's it. Like, and you realize instantly how it's not a big deal and it's just fun and nothing bad happens. So like,
right.
But you know, going back to you talking about that book you read, that I feel like probably missed, like we're like only half a generation apart, but I have no idea what book you're. Well, it's like go out, see the world, get drunk.
Oh, on the Road by Jack Kerouac.
It did not ring a bell to me. But
I love it.
It's funny because there's like the whole like Christian narrative is like you need to stay away from these things because it's dangerous, and then like that's how the devil gets you. And it's like the language is wrong, but they're not entirely wrong because you do it and you realize, okay, this is all fine. The first time you get drunk, like when you realize getting drunk isn't like you're sober and then you're drunk, and then there's like a line that it gets, and you don't really, and then you cross it by accident the first time, but then you realize you had a lot of fun. And it's just funny the way like it's just doing those things and having those experiences, and you're like, none of that's a big deal.
Well, I know
it's not the devil getting you. That's you just realize it's fine, but they can't see it out any other way. It's just and then there's you in, and there's no turning back.
And there's everyone's version of it. You know, I know plenty of heavy drinking Christians. You know, a lot of people will hold on to. A lot of it's just the feeling. They want to feel like, okay, I still believe in this, or I have something to believe in, and I also like drinking. And I don't know. I see people who maybe when they were younger, it was like, don't be drunk, don't get drunk, and then now they just get drunk all the time, and they're like fine with it, you know. But they just like change what's bad, or I don't know.
Youth ministry majors.
Yeah. But they'll draw other lines and saying like, I mean, sometimes they'll drink a little, but I don't smoke weed because that's different. And then they'll just put imaginary lines, just to have something to not cross, to feel like they have those convictions to hold on to still.
Man, it's agitating me talking about all this. It really is. Like it's like I'm so far removed. I think about that too. I think about people and friends that I had who are still like, I'm in it. I go to church and this is my deal. And thinking about who I am and where I am all these years later, and just how different I really am from them as far as how I see the world, and experience it. Because, oh man, it's just the nitpickiness of any of those details that you're talking about, of like, well, it makes my skin crawl. It really does. Because it just doesn't make sense to me, the organized religion thing anymore. I just truly don't get it. It's like, so I don't know how you're allowed, it's going to offend people, but how you're allowed to be an adult and still do this, it's like, get real. Like, come on, give me a break. Look at the world. It's really big. It's really old. It's crazy. All these religions are the same. They were rewritten from other ones, the rituals, and it's all well and good. And I'll even, I think I love Jesus. I think he's great. I can feel the Spirit, but that it's the humanness of, now this means that you either are in or you're out. And if you're out, then you're burning, and then all this and that. And like all that stuff, all that shit is just so like, I worked so hard for so long, and I'm sure you guys can relate to this too. It's like, it really is a kind of form of recovery, right? Where it's its own programming or deprogramming. And it's not like, oh, I was in a crazy sex cult or something. I wasn't in Nixium or whatever, but I was in a lighter, there's still the same techniques and the sort of mental weight that we all have to carry, the guilt and the shame, and but we can do things like this.
Like where you see those techniques being utilized, and there's the light version, which might just be like, your regular 50-person church on a Sunday morning, whatever. But like when you look at these like mega pastors who are constantly being, I don't know, people like Christian Nightmares are showcasing frequently and shining a light on, or Right Wing Watch. But when you look at the cadence and you look at the setup and the performance, and it's, when you even look at those tactics, it's like, I don't know that the people, whatever they think they're doing, I'm not sure. It's almost impossible for me to get in the mind of a full-blown narcissist.
Right.
But it all does feel very manufactured. And so one of the things I'm hearing you say is like the organized religion aspect of it, when you start drawing those lines of who's in, who's out, and that there's like thousands and thousands and thousands of different ways to be religious, and every single one of them is just like, but we nailed it, and everyone else is tough luck. Is
Yeah.
what seems so arrogant and ridiculous to you.
Yeah, it's just like, not just like, but yeah, as you're talking, the metaphor of even a performer or a comedian or something like that, like a certain style of music. I don't. What am I trying to say here? All I'm saying is, like, yeah, the experience is universal. That feeling where you're like, whoa, I'm opening up and I'm around other people and I feel my heart like connected to something bigger. And then when music happens, it's and like I want to return home to the pure safety. Like we all want that, and those arenas, they all can give you a version of that. It's just it ends up becoming a brand, and then it's like, okay, so brought to you by us. Remember that feeling that came through us, which came through this religious figure, which gets you into the after party that you're looking to go to, and that's where we go wrong. I think, I think it's all one thing. I think there's the kind of just, it's all happening. And then there's the human brains who are trying to put things on it. They're trying to put ideas and order and society and all this kind of stuff and cling to it like it actually means anything or it'll ever be here once we're all kind of gone, And so to me, yeah, that's the thing. And even, like if I am going to be spiritual in any sense, like how can I, in my right mind, like limit it to a story that excludes people if they don't know the right password and actions. It's like, how can that be what an all-knowing, all-loving consciousness be that? How can that be that? It doesn't make any sense. And so, I know one guy. He's one of my best friend's godfather, and he is a pastor of a church in Culver City. Ruett Foster is his name, and he's like legit. He's like one of the, you get these people too, right? There are obviously Christian people who are like Mr. Rodgers or someone like that, who you're like, wow, you're really legit. You're the real deal, and so that's, I think, what always gives me pause to just totally be like, I hate all organized religion, but it's really tough because I think they're truly exceptions to the rule,
It's less about their religion and more like the mechanisms of control that they employ. And I think that's where a lot of it comes from, is like, how do you keep your arms around a community of people without rules? And it's hard. It's hard to have that kind of deep connection with someone and stuff, and to solidify their connection with the community that way, rather than continually like putting artificial boundaries around their experiences and saying like, not only is that over there bad, what you're doing is good. Like you're right and those people are wrong. And it only becomes a problem really for most people when something that they appreciate and they enjoy and they want to engage in is over the lines that are drawn in the sand. You see that, like, I had friends that were in like really conservative, even more so than my church, churches and groups and things like that. And one of the things I noticed like early on is that everybody comes up with their own version of rules based on what's important to them. So like one of my friends went to a church that was extremely strict about a whole bunch of different things, but not alcohol. And it's like, you look at all the different things that they were like very adamant about. And then this one thing that almost all churches agree is like a bad thing that shouldn't be engaged. All churches of that ilk agree that alcohol's bad, right? That they were okay with. But I think that's because the leadership there liked to drink. So they came up with ways to justify that particular problem. But then, women speaking in church That can't be.
Exactly.
Women wearing pants in other churches, like women wearing pants or coming into the building without something over their hair. Like that's a problem. It's all about like, what can I be adamant about and stress that doesn't interfere with my life and what I want to do.
And these churches that had women come in with like the bonnets on their hair, I think that just started from a kink, bonnet kink. I think they liked drinking, and then they had bonnet kink. So they're like, look, you can drink. Women have to wear bonnets.
I'm down.
I don't see the problem here. So.
Dude, look, if you're a woman that consensually wears a bonnet, go for it. We are bonnet affirming.
Yes.
But, to force someone to wear a bonnet for your king, that's where it becomes a problem for me.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that made me think of Nazarene. Do you know it's like that?
That's a big one, yeah.
Where you can't dance. And so I went to a concert, and it's at a Nazarene college close to San Diego. A Christian show, MXPX was playing, a bunch of other bands, and you can't dance. You couldn't dance. It's like you'd start like moshing or whatever, and there'd be all these guards like, stop. You can't, like, because that just, these Nazarenes, they're like, and no dancing, and it's like, all right, yeah, it's.
Dude, the camp that I went to, the pastor that kind of ran this thing, just another like wacky guy who, anybody who's volunteering to run that camp is probably nuts. My dad's not going to do it.
Right.
But this guy was like very adamant that you shouldn't clap because clapping is giving a person the glory when you should give God the glory. So somebody would come up and sing or do a solo or play an instrument. And if somebody clapped, he would get up afterwards and be like, please refrain from clapping. We're all about giving God the glory here and not man the glory. And so I appreciate it if you wouldn't clap.
Why would someone get... Sorry, go ahead.
He's just mad because he can't clap on beat. That's all.
Like this any guy, good white man, he can't. But why have someone perform? They're taking all the glory. Why wouldn't we just sit here, look at an empty stage, and be like, "Go, God, go," and just like know that we're giving him all glory, right? The second you step out to sing a song, we got to look at your face. Like that's stealing glory from the Lord.
There is this band. I heard it listening to a podcast of a guy who was he's like in a band previously, years ago, probably 10 years ago. But he was, he mentioned playing with a band that would play with their backs to the crowd because they didn't want to show their, it's not all about us, it's about God, which of course is more of a distraction than just playing normal.
I know.
So I don't know, they got their reward in full, I guess, but it's just like the stuff people come up with. It's
right.
So
logic
wild.
Is nowhere to be found with any of it. So who cares?
Everybody's looking for their own little thing, especially like young people trying to start a church or grow like a small church. Yeah. Like Sam, you remember Room 180?
Yeah.
Which was attached to the church that we played a lot of shows in at Liberty. I remember at one point, the guy who was running it at the time was like, yeah, he goes, we're really just challenging a lot of notions about church. And, one of the things that we're doing is like, we want to avoid like having this fixation on the worship band, and the people leading it. So we're actually having the band set up in the back of the sanctuary, so it's not drawing attention to it. And I remember even back then, like listening to this guy and I'm like, I just can I leave? I'm trying to cook 30 pounds of spaghetti in the back, sir.
Now, what did you say we played? Were you in bands too? Did you play in a band?
I was, yeah.
What was the band?
The Poison Written. You're probably a fan.
Huge. That's you. Oh, you're Casey from that band. Oh my gosh.
That's me. I am the Casey.
Yeah. I got egg on my face. I'm embarrassed. Yeah, you guys are killing it.
You're not gonna fanboy for the rest of the episode.
No, I'll keep it cool. I'm a professional. I'll keep it cool. I'll keep it inside. So what kind of music? Like hard music? Like
Christian metalcore, bro.
Oh heck yeah! What did you play in it?
I squawked. That's what I did.
The
I was the
singer.
screamer.
Wow, bet you were.
He would do clean vocals too.
And everyone watching that show would be like, well, no one knew what podcasts were back then, but yeah, singers become podcasters, right?
Yeah.
That's
Somebody's going to listen
You're up
to
on the
me
mic,
if it's
right?
the last thing I do.
Yeah, exactly. I squawked in a band. I'll squawk on a podcast. I love it. That's so funny. The poison what? Written?
The poison written.
Oh, what and what's the meaning behind that? Did you have a verse under it, or
it was,
bands would do that? Like
Galatians, I love that you're
5:25.
making him have this conversation because we never got into the meaning behind the name, and that's almost always worse than the actual name when you ask people.
Always.
Well, I joined the band post naming ceremony. It was a couple other dudes that were in the band that had a band in high school.
Okay.
But it has to do. It's abstract. It has to do with the power of words, guys.
Abstract stuff.
And if you can follow along with me there, honestly, like I'm all about letting the audience interpret the band name as they.
So
feel
you don't know.
Fits.
That's what you're trying to say. You don't know.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
You don't have any idea what it's. Written words. It's like the poison written is everything written by man. Because God has written the pure scripture, and so everything else is the poison written. If you want to put your mind into things of this world and read wild books like Jack Kerouac's legendary Beat Generation novel On the Road and go, oh, that actually sounds good. Going to a jazz club at 4 a.m. and drinking and kissing a girl. I want to do that with my life. I don't want to do this bullshit. The poison written. Yeah,
Sam would have read that book if Rick Warren would have written it.
Yeah, probably. I didn't. Listen, I want to make it very clear. I didn't read The Purpose Driven Life. My mom read that book.
She read it to you out loud?
That was your family devotional?
Yes. That's
like when you were going to bed at night and you're just in your tidy whities and a oversized t-shirt.
I was sucking my thumb.
And you're sitting Indian style.
Chastity belt.
Hey! Crisscross applesauce, asshole.
Rick Warren says, don't touch your pee-pee, not even to wash it.
Well, straight up, dude, it's like I ended up in all, I came in at 12 and then through high school, good old puberty starts happening. And by then I'm kind of plugged in. And so I went to this other church because Matt Grover and some other kids and their moms were like, all right, let's send our boys to the Christian sex talk workshop. And so it was like all straight up Dr. James Dobson. Are we familiar with who this is?
Boom.
Oh, yeah. Are we ever?
Very much so.
Having to read and listen to his stuff where it's like, well, looking at a magazine, if you use is fine, but if you use it for masturbation, then it's a sin, and just all that kind of stuff. Talk about ways to keep people, plugged into your community. The total mind F of all that. I think I'll never fully unravel that. And I do mean that sincerely. And
did you read his puberty book, Preparing for Adolescence? Is that what they were working through?
It must have been what it's based on. Yeah. Oh my,
hey, there it is.
Right. Holding it up to the screen.
Down here for a while.
Wow.
Oh, look at this thrift store gem that April found this week.
Dateable. Are you? Are they? They're using
I don't know that
they pronouns. That's really progressive.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'm sure that's what that's about.
My wife read this one when she was hitting that age, and she was reading me a section from it. We're gonna have to do a live roast of this book at some point. It's wild.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny how parents, our generation's parents, would have been just like, yeah, you know what? That sounds like a good idea. Your friend, because I remember you would ask kids. That was the goal. Hey, everyone, ask your friends to youth group, and then random kids from public school would just show up and be like, I guess this is fine. This is you. I used to bring this non-Christian friends of mine to Christian events, and they were like, no one's put off at that point by their friends and what they're into. They just go, I'll check it out because I care about you. Like if like I was invited to something by somebody, I'd be like, I don't know if I'm not 16 anymore. We don't just do weird shit like that. But parents would be like, yeah, that sounds great. Go to their youth group. All of us, like the day that someone goes to my kids, hey, do you want to come to my youth group? I'm going to be like,
yeah, what are you going to do?
Oh boy. Do I say they can't go and make them want to go more? Do I just let them go and then have a talk about it? Like instead
Sam's going to be like, can I see your curriculum? You're not going to talk about critical race theory, are you?
Oh wait, that's your deal? That's your vibe, dude?
Yeah. Oh, you didn't. Oh, sorry. I probably should have clarified that from the start. I'm that guy, and then Casey is like the screaming liberal. We're like
okay,
Hannity and Combs.
Fun. Yeah, the odd couple. I get it. That's fun. Well, I think for my 2 cents, I would go with your second option, which is let them go if they want and talk to them. To me, it's all about talking. Like, I think my dad tried to talk to me at one point about it. Like, oh, you're going to that, or like, okay. And, me kind of being like, and do you believe too, Dad? Like, do you believe in the right thing? And him being a little resistant or vague to it, I remember being super threatening to me. And so that can be really tough, because those experiences that they're going to go to, they're trying to razzle dazzle the kids. They're trying to really wow them, right? And give them this like intense emotional, psychological experience. So then
absolutely,
it's like can dad compete, and what they have built in, which almost, it's like the Christian version of SP, which in Scientology is a suppressive person. I don't know if you know this, but familiar with Scientology, but it's like anyone who's
Going Clear.
Yeah. Anyone who's not in is kind of against it, right? Like Satan's got a hold of them a little bit or something, or, and so, boy, we got to either get them, we got to save them or cut them loose, and, yeah, that's a good question. Cause I have 2 little kids, younger. I don't worry too much about it at the end of the day. I don't worry. I really don't. But you never know what's going to happen. But
what must it be like to be a parent who's never really been affiliated with a church or religion to any extent for the most part, and then all of a sudden, like, your kid gets invited to youth group and just it sticks. Like, you go to the camp that like we went to, and your kid goes through the big altar call and ends up crying up front at the in front of the crowd and dedicates himself to Christ, and they give him all these books to take home and read, and you're just on the sidelines like, wait, what you did what? It's got to be insane. And there's had to be a lot of parents that went through that,
Yeah, I think it can be any kind of reaction where it's the old, like, well, at least they're not doing drugs, it's like, well, at least
right.
They're safe. At least they're in a church and they're safe. I think some parents think that, like, there could be worse
until
things.
All the sexual abuse allegations start coming out.
Yeah,
exactly. Later.
Well,
maybe not as safe as they once expected.
Looking at you, Australia.
Yeah, looking at you, that one dude who came to that Christian camp I went to in high school, and when all the guys and the youth leader were all having a heart-to-heart about how tough it is to struggle with our lust, and he's like, oh, I have a bunch of Playboy magazines in my garage, and I used to look at them, but now I want to throw them away. And it was just, there's a weird guy who went up to and it was just this odd, he slipped in a sort of half invite, to check out his Playboys, pre-internet. Yeah, it's all
the oversharing
garbage, everybody. Sorry, hate to break it to you.
Yeah, there's always that dude that's like working with the youth group and simultaneously like trying to work out his own thoughts on things. And I remember that guy at my youth group, and he was really nice dude, but just not quite right, And he was the first one that I ever heard talk about how dinosaurs might not be real. Maybe God put the bones there to test us and stuff. And there's just a lot of things that he said that I'm like, at the time, I'm like, you're not fully in, and you're supposed to be a teacher. It was very concerning to me. And I think he had a crush on my buddy's sister, which was especially weird.
Yeah. You got to watch out for the youth leaders. They can get weird fast. Why don't we, I want to take a quick shift. I just feel like we go down this rabbit hole forever, but one of the things that came up a little bit ago is, the power of the structure of it, and the music and the way it gets you and the way they pull you in. And it's like, you can have those, because I'm guessing all of us have had those experiences outside of church, right? That's why everyone knows those feelings, and everyone's, I feel like anyone, especially people who enjoy music, like go into a show or whatever, like you have those moments of like almost transcendence where you're there with a bunch of people, but everything around just kind of like phases out and everyone's kind of just singing along. I don't know. And I remember the first time I felt that outside of a church setting and was like, oh, wow, this is the exact same thing. The exact same. Like that's not, I realized then, like, that's not my special connection, or it is maybe it is a special connection to God. Right. Maybe it's not, but whatever it is, it's not exclusive to singing a song that has 3 chords and talks about Jesus coming back any day now. Like,
yeah, it's like going to see Paul McCartney and everyone's singing Hey Jude at the end, and you're like, what in the world? This is incredible. And then at the end, Paul's like, okay, you like that feeling? Here's what you got to do. Like, you want to feel like this and not feel, remember how you're feeling terrible before? Now you got to come up and do the altar call, because of Jesus. It's like, no, it's just Hey Jude, and that's a great feeling. And because I think that it does have to do with like a performance, really, like art and performance, and it's so devalued in our culture, but it's like, it is, I think, what like the spiritualness of being a human being is to experience something like that. What it does is it takes us out of linear time. It takes us out of, okay, it's 7:15 and then I got to do this and I got to cook dinner and then I got to go to bed. It holds you in a place, right? And in a moment, and that's magical, quite frankly. It is transcendent. You are transcending the like plodding along ego mind of like, what's next. And if you can capture someone in the moment like that, it does turn their mind off and it does open them up. And then if you can then convince them that that beautiful feeling that is innate to human beings, but if you can convince them that it's the brand of your environment that is the supplier, then you got them, And then there's just the tribalism. Once you're in, I think it's tribalism. I think our deepest fear, pretty much, the core is just being abandoned and left behind. That's the core fear of any animal or human, is like, I got to be part of this, and everyone wants to be a part of something. And so if everyone agrees that what we're doing is bitching, and you have a whole network of people that people want that, you want to be part of something, and that's how they get you.
And that is something that people feel who grow up in a religious community, who then leave it. You'll often hear that as a complaint, and that shows up in studies and polls too. Is like, you lose that connection to people. Who did we talked to someone who compared it to like a bowling alley. It might have been Dan Koch, which was a great, like, people don't just go like join bowling leagues anymore, or like, there's not like a lot of community events that bring people together outside of an organized religion. So, you do lose a sense of community when you don't have those gathering places to go. I mean, maybe bars, but maybe you're sick of drinking and you're older and you're not trying to go out and hang out at a bar till 2 a.m. Like, without it, if you move or relocate to a new area, trying to build a community is difficult. So those settings do offer that as an advantage, and that's something people miss when they lose it. The sad part is that we're unable to, or I guess a lot of religious institutions have been unable to create spaces that allow for people to feel like they can belong, even if they don't believe everything the exact same way. I don't know how you fix that.
Yeah,
it's just community. I mean, that's the biggest thing, and that's the thing that we always come back to with the value of church. You know, even for a person who's not spiritual, which, you know, I don't consider myself spiritual at all, and you know, for me especially, like, you know, my experience, like, finding that sense of community is really tough, and there's not many places where I've found that, you know, and I don't know that I ever even felt that really within the church, but I think that's something that everybody struggles with. And, you know, if you're pushed to a point, eventually, like, you're so hungry for that you'll take it anywhere you can get it, I think, too. Not saying that everybody in the 100%. Church is that by any means, but there's a lot of people that, like, it's just like, finally, I have a group of people that seems to value me, and I get to be a part of, like you were saying, a part of something bigger. You know, I 100%. Mean, there's a structure, and there's an infrastructure for that within organized religion that I think is really appealing. If you don't go the religious route, like, it's hard to find that. What are you going to do? You're going to troll Shia LaBeouf on 8chan?
And the flip side of all that, which is also funny, is that liberal churches, where the belief systems aren't as stifling and that they are more accepting, they are LGBTQ affirming, they have pretty much abandoned a belief in any sort of hell, maybe even an afterlife entirely, and then they struggle to survive and last. So what does that show you about what types of community people are looking for, and the power of the structures that control the way you think, and the way that forces or fabricates a feeling of community? That's above my pay grade, but
it's hard to do without the rules.
Yeah,
like we were saying earlier. That's a part of what keeps it knit together, is we're right and they're wrong, and here's all the reasons why, and here, memorize these talking points. If you're ever in an argument, you can reference these and it'll get you out of a jam. You know, I think that's a big part of what's up. Also, like, you talked about your buddy who's a pastor and who's legitimate, you know, and I'm sure he has like you can sense that the guy is genuine and that he's a leader of people in a way that draws them in, right? Gets them to want to be a part of what he's building.
Absolutely.
But how many pastors have you ever known who were, you know, genuine or not, how many of them were good at doing that? There's a lot of them I can think of that weren't. They were kind of odd, didn't really fit in. You know, my pastor growing up was great. He's a great guy. But so many of the other ones that I, you know, had to sit through and stuff, you know, you're looking at this guy and you're like, this dude, this feels like so like cold and sterile. This guy has no connection to the world other than this building right here. Like, he leaves this room and all he does is just kind of go isolate himself with his family.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's weird that it's like
that's
that's a job. Yeah, it is tough. It's weird. There are times when I'm just like, I can't believe that it's a job for people. I can't believe that that's just what they got to do, is just be that role. You know, just kind of talk about the Bible again. We're talking about, you know, it's like, you got something new to say about it again. I've been thinking about, you know, it's like, what even is that? You know, why are we listening to this dude every week? Like, why is what he thought of when he read Galatians this week so much, you know, why do I have to sit here and listen to you? Because I have a job or something, you know, and then like your job is to read the Bible and tell me about it so I feel all right, you know? It's a wild job.
The age of information has done pastors a bit dirty, because you're like, I can just go online and listen to sermons now.
Yeah. Well,
literally. Like, what did you do the other 6 days? Did you spend 6 days on this football analogy?
They go to lunch and they talk to people. I see them around. I see these pastors.
Yeah. Praying over their meals.
Well, it's interesting, like, because when I started getting into acting, that is its own version of like church. Like it really is. It's in a room. It's together. It has an emotional, psychological bonding, experience. And there's usually obviously the teacher is kind of the pastor, and depending on the like, because I teach, I've taught acting before. Right now I teach feature film writing and been doing it consistently.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, almost consistently over the last year. And so it's really built up a lot, mostly online because of COVID, obviously. But even that, there's a community being built, and you can really see the similar elements where it's like people they want to connect. People want to connect. People want to have a network of people that are on the same page as them, and they feel like there's so many good things that can happen, whether it's just for your life and your community, and you have a place for your kids to go play and you can trust the other parents, or if it's, like I want to be a filmmaker and I want to be around people who can like help support me and be there for me. And it does any of that stuff does very similar things to what a church does, or even AA, 12-step programs. Like,
yeah.
Not that I would admit to anything, but and it's an anonymous program, but I have, I've sat in on some meetings and through the years, and I'll tell you, that's what I always wanted church to be. It's about like a higher power. It's about like connecting to something bigger, and it's about service. And one day at a time, it's about helping other people, listening, trying your best. And like anyone's definition of what a higher power or God is okay. It can be, oh, I made up an elephant god in my head, a butterfly god, or Jesus or whatever. It's just that really is what I think. It's like a non-denominational kind of spiritual, kind of just like human helping experience is like the idea behind it, where it's like people can come if they need to connect, they need help, they need to talk, and like there's no judgment, and you don't have to pay them any money.
Yeah, there's grace and compassion for people who slip up, and you just start over, and you have that encouragement the next day.
Exactly.
What's you think about it, and like all of those different things, even like acting, the like creating a space for people to feel comfortable being vulnerable is like a huge part of that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's not only are you trusting people enough to be vulnerable with them, but like you're entrusted with that responsibility for them too. They're being vulnerable with you, and that creates like a real connection. Because I mean, that's, you think about like the difference between the people that that are acquaintances or like work friends, and the people who are like your actual friends. A big part of that is just who have you allowed yourself to be vulnerable with? Like how many which of those people knows, some of the things that you struggle with, or like your long-term goals and stuff like that. And who do you know those things about? And that to me is like a big line in the sand. I got a ton of acquaintances and stuff like that, and like work friends and things, but I've got a very small group of people that I've actually like shared stuff about me with, Yeah. And it seems like, even acting, you have to be vulnerable to be good at it, I would imagine, right?
Ideally. Yeah. Ideally. Unless you're The Rock, or Tom Cruise.
Are we calling him a good actor now?
You didn't say good actor. You just said actor. No,
successful.
I love The Rock. I think he's just so cool, and look at him go. And Tom Cruise too. But Tom Cruise has a thing where he won't say help. He'll never say the line help in a movie. How about that?
Really?
Because he doesn't want to be that vulnerable. That's like part of his brand and his persona. Like he has certain things that he will do and he will not do. Like that's how dialed in the brand of Tom Cruise is. And I think it's similar for The Rock. Like The Rock will never do a sex scene.
Really?
He's never done one and will never do one. Maybe like a kiss or something, but like, I don't know. You hear these things, people are like, these are some of the rules for these actors, but It's because they don't want to look vulnerable, because they want to appeal to be people, or seem like the tough guy. But yes, back to what you said. I think, yeah, like being vulnerable or open or feeling, and yeah, that's the whole name of the game, is to kind of like let other people in, to your experience, which is, albeit made up. That's the conceit of the art form, I guess. But
You know what
it's
role I'm waiting for The Rock to do?
what
I want to see I'll start calling The Rock a good actor when he does like a machinist, the pianist sort of role where he has to lose like he has to slim down to 80 pounds, like Christian Bale
That'd be
style.
freaking sweet. I saw his list of like what he does every day. It's like,
it's insane.
It's his like up at 4:15, cold shower, eat smoothie, work out, do this, second shower at 7 p.m. It's pretty intense. It's pretty intense.
He seems like a really nice guy.
He does.
I feel like the world you're talking about, I do some acting, did some, like, you said you teach screenwriting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all of that sounds very mysterious to people who have no idea what like that world is like, and no one knows how to even set foot in that industry. Like, how did you get
guys like you in Wichita?
Yeah,
not a lot of guys like me in Wichita.
We're into things like corn.
Yeah,
and you do auto parts.
It would be like the equal amount of mystery going both ways. Like, to me, it's like, whoa, you do corn every day? Like, what's going on here?
You just do corn. So how'd you even get in, just to start us off, how'd you even get into that world? When did you realize that's the world you wanted to get into?
Yeah, I think being from Orange County has something to do with it, just by being distance-wise. Like, LA is right up there, and so somehow it feels like closer. But I never, my parents were like pretty young parents. They had me when they were like 21, 22. And so, all just to say, like, I love my parents, and they did a good job, or they did their best. But they weren't hip to, let's see what this kid is into and let him gravitate towards things. It was more just like, you're going to be a baseball player and do it. And so it was never like an option. I wasn't like a kid who was like, I've got to sing. And, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I loved playing sports. And so it didn't occur to me. But I think it just, as I grew up, I became a person who just was like social and into different stuff. And then I liked music. Music was like my first way in. I think that's sort of adjacent because it's performance, and I just, again, like, out of high school, it's like it's funny because the band, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing after high school. And then I joined the band. We toured for a while and came home. And then it was like, okay, what do I do? I'm back at my parents' house, and there's a junior college across the street. I really just took an acting class because it was Monday through Thursday. It was a summer session class, I remember, with Janine Crystal. I wonder if she's still out. I should look her up. It was at 11 a.m. So in my head, I was like, this will get me up before noon. And I've always thought it might be fun to give it a whirl, try acting. And then when I took the class, I just kind of, as they say, caught the bug, I was just like, this is fun. So yeah, I was taking this class, and the teachers were so passionate, and I just hadn't been around people like that. Like, my family, people I knew, were just so like middle of the road, don't get too emotional. And I think I just was like, man, I could like yell and do all this wild stuff in acting class. And I just had nothing else that I wanted to do or was passionate about. And so I did all the plays and took all the classes at that junior college for a few years, and then didn't want to go to proper college and take math classes. And so I just moved up to LA again, because I'm closer, and just started hacking it out. And I've just really kind of found my way. And so, and I'm just this kind of person. Like, I'm someone who does a bunch of different things. It's like I made this album over the past year, and then I just shot a short film, and then I'm about to shoot a feature film, and teaching writing, acting, whatever. And so it allows me to do those different things. But I don't know. I think it just sort of, I had the space, my parents didn't necessarily like encourage me or give me direction in this direction in my life, but they gave me the space to kind of figure it out. And I think having the space to figure it out, and even if I stumbled, a lot, I still was able to just kind of find myself more, and so, yeah. And it's funny to hear you say, oh, it seems so mysterious, or it's not normally what people do in Wichita or wherever, but it is just yeah, it is different. It is different, this kind of work, but it's also much more similar than I think people think. My wife is from outside of Pittsburgh, and I was talking to her dad and brother, and it's like you remind them that, like, on a movie, there's carpenters and electricians and truck drivers and cooks. It's most the people are just people. It's only the actors and the directors and the writers, producers. There's that, and that's what you think of. But what makes these things happen is the same as any town, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier of a lot of LA is just regular people, and a lot of the locals are people who are either just regular ass people, or they're like, oh, my grandpa was a grip, and we've just been here ever since, we've been here for generations. But it is just, it's just like anything else, except for, it's totally different, because what I do, I think what would be funny about me and a guy who works in corn talking to each other is, like, my job is like feeling. It's like emotion and story. Like, story is like feeling and human truth in the form of a story, right? That's the ideal of what you're trying to do, is like give someone this elevated experience. And the person who works in corn, that's not what their occupation is. That's not the tools of their trade. It's physical to do it. And so, it would seem very different. But there's a famous acting teacher named Sanford Meisner, and he said, acting is easy. It just takes 20 years to learn how to do it. And I guess I thought of that just now, because it's hard to say sometimes, because it is so normal to me. It is just like how I relate to the world, and I've just doubled down on it. And so I, just like anyone learns how to make a table really well, I'm a craftsperson, I'm a craftsman, but my craft is telling stories through, moving pictures and music and stuff,
Yeah. To be really clear, cool, I mean, you can feel corn. It is ribbed. You can put it wherever you want.
Wow. Okay. You went far within that one run. It started with, you can feel it, ribbed. You can put it anywhere you want. I wouldn't do that. My wife is a physician. I think they just changed it to physician associate, a PA. It's basically like a doctor, but you do 2 years of medical school instead of 4, so you don't specialize. It's like a nurse practitioner. I don't know if whatever.
Okay.
She, but first of all, having a wife that doesn't do anything like I do, she's the corn worker in our family. But saying you can put corn anywhere you want, talking to someone in the medical profession, if they've ever worked an ER shift, you don't. A lot of stuff you think you can stick anywhere, you can't. So
Has she ever tugged an ear out of somebody?
Not an ear.
Has she ever had to shuck a person?
No, but I think, like, any ER doctor you talk to, they straight up are like, people, stop putting stuff in your butt, okay? Like, all the time it's happening. And it's like they can tell, because they, like, person walks in all shy and stuff,
Yeah.
Like,
they shit their pants.
I was gardening and I fell.
Yeah.
And
so I slipped in my bathtub.
Well, let me just say, before we get past this, because I definitely don't want to come off like I work with the emotional, blah, and this corn worker is not that. Like, obviously someone's experience of life or how they relate to it or whatever, the art within their life or it is different for everybody. And there's just as many like kind of narcissistic, emotionally stunted people that work in my industry as there are in any other industry, maybe
Sure.
more so. They're just the megalomaniac types, and so it's not like, yeah, somehow the creative realm is where all the great soft emotional intelligence people are, and then everyone else is just sort of grunting and working on corn and machinery. Like, I definitely don't think that at all. I just think it's always been like this. It's back to the concept of a tribe or a community. We long for community because people are made differently, and people are made to go in groups because there are people like me. I think why I hate pastors so much is because I kind of am a pastor, and like truly, like now I have all these students, and like I'm the one like organizing this community, and then it's like I'm the kind of centerpiece of this thing, right? And I'm just not selling them Jesus. I'm selling them, you can make your own movies and let's do it, And but all to say, the community, yeah, sometimes it's practical what you get from community, but it's also energetic. Like, there's the funny person, there's the quiet person, there's the timid person, there's the outspoken person, and they're all gonna be in the group, if we have a community, because we are built different. Like, one person needs to be the accountant because they're good with numbers naturally, and the next person, that's not me. I'm the person who can like kind of blab and joke around, and unfortunately that is a position that's needed, and or fortunately for me, but
Yeah, definitely. And all
yeah.
the people, like the shy one and the timid one, the outgoing one, I feel like to some degree, if my youth group experience taught me anything, is that everyone kind of wants to be a little bit of other types of people.
Mm.
And it takes like a whole variety, like everybody's playing a unique role in that community. And that's a good thing. That's one of the things that like my wife always talks about is like everything that you hear from, the motivational things and stuff. It's like, you need to be a leader. You need to stand up and take ownership and be a leader in your group or whatever and stuff. And not everybody's meant to be a leader. And a lot of people don't want to be a leader, and that's okay. Like, that is a valid path too.
Absolutely.
And I think that sometimes we just put so much emphasis on certain roles within those communities and stuff, and it's like they're not any more or less important in a lot of cases than some of the others.
Yeah, because people do have natural tendencies and dispositions and skills, and they're not always utilized. Yeah, out of some pressure that, yeah, everyone's supposed to be a freaking leader or whatever. It's like when I directed the first movie, the feature film I directed, that was a real aha moment for me where I was like, I really love this job. But then I talked to the costume designer or whoever, and they're like, man, I'd never want to do your job. Like, they would hate to be the director because they love doing the costume design, and that's their realm. And that's because, and you learn that a lot as a director because you're the one carrying the torch from the start to finish, is you working with technicians all along the way. This person just does sound, this person just does a camera, this person just acts, this person does the clothing, this person does the make, everyone's doing their one thing, and that's exactly what it is. And then you need the person to kind of carry the project through all those phases.
Is there some movies and TV shows, or some of the projects that you've done that we would recognize?
Let's see, what have I done before? As an actor, I popped up in a couple things. I had a couple lines. You know the show Key and Peele? Do you know that show?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
There's a sketch called Office Homophobe where
yes, I've seen that one.
I walk in at the end and I give Jordan a kiss, and it's like, hey, this is my boyfriend Gavin, and then I'm like, hey, how's it going? I walk away. Yeah.
I've
seen this. I've seen that sketch. That's a great sketch too.
Oh yeah, great sketch. Those guys are great. Yeah, my best friend is Colton Dunn. He lives across the street from me. And he was a writer on that show all the seasons.
That's cool.
Yeah, he's what else have I done? I was in the P.T. Anderson movie, The Master. But I was cut out of it. I shot for 5 days. I sang a song and played a drum, and you can see me in the outtakes, but that was a huge thing for me because P.T. Anderson's my favorite. Philip Seymour Hoffman's my favorite. And
that was one of his final works, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's Philip Seymour Hoffman.
I got to get all dressed up in 50s stuff and be on set for 5 days and watch them make that movie. It was pretty incredible. Amy Adams was there. Joaquin Phoenix was walking around the outside. Laura Dern. It's pretty incredible. But what else have I done? I've done a lot of indie stuff. I made an indie feature film called The Dramatics, and that's on Amazon Prime currently. And then, I popped up in a few shows. I was on Reno 911. I was on
nice.
A couple other shows here and there. But yeah, in general, and especially these days, I'm a little more behind the scenes. I help a lot of people write and develop their stuff, and so I stopped auditioning as much, but I still, making my own projects and this and that. But
that's cool.
I listen to so many podcasts that are hosted by LA-based comedians, since it's kind of like comedy mecca.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so many. Joe Rogan up until recently, Bobby Lee, Andrew Santino, a bunch of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any party that's ever wanted to do stand up, or is that just a whole separate lane?
Well, it's kind of its own separate lane, but it is the lane right next to the lane that I was in. Cause my thing is, when I was in LA bumping around, doing some acting stuff, I started doing improv. And once I started doing improv, I was like, oh, I want to go to UCB. And UCB, Upright Citizens Brigade, had just opened in LA. So I used to go to see ASCAT every week. And I was like, these guys are the best. I want to get in here. And so I got into UCB and then did that for years and was on the house teams. And, it was a big, and it still is a big part of my network and community and creative identity. But I did a one person show. I've done stuff on my own, but I never really committed to stand up, and it's kind of a regret of mine. Not that it's too late, but now that I see, I have friends that are stand ups and they do well, and there's something that I never thought of, but I see it's so clear now. Stand ups. What's great about becoming a stand up is yes, if you just put in the years to try to get better, if you get pretty good, you're your own thing and you can get paid to do it more. You can do the gigs and travel and stuff. Whereas doing improv and sketch, you can either get on SNL or, and there's some paid stuff, but it's okay, I'll be funny. Just wait till I start talking to this person. It's you can't take yourself somewhere. I was just yesterday, I was hanging out with my friend and he's a very successful comedian. And I envy it in a way because actors, because when you see a stand-up on a TV show, it's man, that guy's making the money that other actor's making. And then when they rap, they're going to do a show and they get paid again. They do 5 shows at the Brea Improv and then they get to come back to set. And so it's one, you can control your fate a little bit more. And it's also the ultimate art form of just a person and a microphone. There's something just pretty wild about that. I still flirt with maybe it's not too late for me because I have been in that next lane and I'm I wonder what credits transfer. Some are going to transfer, some are not going to transfer. Being used to being on stage and talking, a lot of things transfer, but it's its own art form. And so, but it's tough to be a 40-year-old guy with 2 little kids and hacking at all the stuff I do to be you know what I should do?
Yeah.
Let me start this whole new craft, cause look at me. That's what I said already, where it's I'll make an album now, and now I'll make another movie, and then I'll try to do, it's like I'm already not doing this Hollywood thing the way you're supposed to do, which is do one thing in a really specific way so people can know what that thing is and then cast you as that thing. And then once you're in, maybe you can do some other stuff. But like, I think I've always I never had any thought or guidance of what to do. And I've just been like, yeah, Philip Seymour Hoffman or Daniel Day-Lewis, these people who are like shapeshifters and starting and stopping. I look up to them. And so I think I've been a little all over the place. As you can tell by how I talk, I'm a little all over the place sometimes.
I'm fascinated by that world. Like
and
all these comedians talk about the Comedy Store. And so I got stuck in LA for a night on my way back from China. And I was like, hey man, you want to go to the Comedy Store? Like, what's that? I'm like, I don't know, but I've heard so much about it. Like, I just want to go see it. And so we went and sat there and watched like all these people that, I had listened to before or saw in movies and stuff get up and do their thing. And it was so much fun.
Yeah. And that's a big part of the allure of being in Los Angeles. Like, it is tough to leave. Like, you get tempted with it all the time where everyone's like, it's cheaper elsewhere. I could get a house, etc. But there is something about just the culture, the people that are like, who's going to be at the Comedy Store tonight? Who's going to be over here tonight? Like, you are closer to more, some prominent, performers and stuff, But yeah, the Comedy Store there's a whole documentary about the Comedy Store that just came out.
I heard that. I haven't watched it yet,
but I've sat in there a few times. Yeah, Comedy Store is pretty sweet.
So,
but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
You mentioned your album a couple of times. I just wanted to give you a chance to let the listeners know what you're still doing, dabbling in musically.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I made an album. When the quarantine happened, we're all at home, and my mother-in-law was living with us at the time, and so it made for a crowded apartment. And because there was our two little kids in our 2-bedroom apartment with my mother-in-law too, and our dog, but we had a back garage, and so I kind of it gave me somewhere to go, and she would like watch the kids, and so I had some free time, and we were locked down. I couldn't go anywhere, and I just started recording some songs on my own, just with a couple mics on GarageBand on my laptop, and demoing ideas, because I never even considered myself a formal singer-songwriter or anything. Still don't, but I started making songs the way that I had an instinct to do it, which is just to start going. And so 2 or 3 of the songs on the album I had written previously, but the others came out of this process of just playing the drums and recording it, and then just coming up with music. None of it was premeditated. It was just like a feeling. And so I'm really proud of the album because it feels like me. And I think because a lot of it did come out of this, like I said, like not a process of really thinking about it, not premeditated. And so it's called Dead Drummer Friends. This is the name of that's the moniker, of the project. And the album's called Hit Machine. It's on Spotify, Bandcamp. If you want to support it, you go on Bandcamp and you can like buy the digital album, or I've got a few CDs if you want to buy a CD. And but yeah, it's like,
you didn't do cassette tapes. A lot of people are doing cassette tapes.
They're great. I might do vinyl still. I just did CDs to start because they're so cheap. You can get 100 for $100, and so, and they look cool and whatever. Some people are into it, and it's all good. Cassettes would be dope. I think someday I'll do some cassettes for sure. But let's see. So the music it's like, people tell me it's like punk, funk, like garage soul, kind of like someone told me Fugazi meets some Afrobeat music. Like it has all those influences. So it's like garage and soul and a little Talking Heads, a little, LCD sound system, different things kind of sprinkled in there. And so, it's available wherever if you look that up. The name Dead Drummer Friends. I used to be in another band called the Cotillionaires, and my buddy Gian Molina was the drummer in that band, and he passed away. And after that, another friend in another band, Harris, you might even, speaking of comedians, Harris Whittles was his name. And he was a good pal of mine, and he
no way, wow.
Yeah, and so he passed, and
that rocked the comedy world. I mean, just because I listened to a good bit of
Harris
too, and that was I heard that name a lot for a while.
Yeah, he's the best. He was so great. And obviously, still all those podcasts he did, and a bunch of stuff of his is still out there. But yeah, he was because like my best friend, one of my best friends is Michael Cassidy, who's in Don't Stop or We'll Die with him and Paul Rust and Harris and I were drum buddies, and we do shows at UCB. We all used to hang out. And a little kind of sad tidbit is my friend got married and we each played a song. So I played drums backing him up, and then Harris used my drums to back up my friend's wife. And that was the last drum set he ever played, was my drum set. Because he died like 3 days later or something, 4 days later.
Oh my God.
Very, very sad. But yeah, all to say, that name came from that. Just a couple close friends of mine, because I'm a drummer too. And so I play other instruments, and a drummer who wants to play other instruments needs other drummers sometimes. And I luckily have more friends who are still with us. And and so the thing I'll plug, last thing with the album is, follow me on Instagram. I'm Mr. Scott Rodgers, Mister Scott, and then Rodgers, and just kind of look me up, because the end of October, I'm going to do a live streaming concert through Highland Park TV. It's this cool old public access TV studio, and they shoot it like old school with the funny fades, and it's close to Halloween. I think we might all dress up, but I'm getting a band together, because the album is all me except for the keys and the horns. I play all the instruments and sing, but I'm going to put a band together and do like a live streaming concert. So maybe we'll dress up and
Nice.
But yeah,
that sounds cool, man.
Yeah.
Well,
and I teach writing. Let me plug this real quick, just because I need students.
You're good.
www.scottrodgers.work. I teach feature film writing, and if you want to write a movie, hit me up.
Sounds good. And you can find, I'm sure your website has some of your other work on it that you've done, if people want to check that out too.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
I'm around.
Man, Scott, thanks so much for hanging out with us. This is a lot of fun.
Of course, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Now I'm all like, what don't I know? What don't I know about the Poison Written? Like, what are some songs? What are some song titles? I'm
they probably had really long, fun, silly song titles too sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Caskets Concealing Empires was our big hit, if you
Thank you. That was worth it. That was worth the last push.
Yeah.
Concealing Empires. Oh gosh.
I hope our MySpace gets some hits out of this.
I love
some extra downloads.
It's just so epic and poetic, and you just are like, let's go to the youth group room and frickin' do our concert, man.
Spaghetti Social Metalcore. That's that was our brand.
I love it.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.